What does it mean to be dominant? I've played at the highest level. I've received the highest award.
Thank you.
But those things did not make me dominant. On this show, I want to interview people from various backgrounds and careers to see what made them dominant. That's why I decided to partner up with Mission Winnow. Together, we want to promote progress and achievement while sharing real stories of struggle and success. We want to acknowledge the challenges in front of us, but we also want to pivot towards improvement and positivity.
Everything is going to work out.
We are the dominant ones. We dunk on the world. We don't let the world dunk on us.
I think what makes wrestling and just basketballers and pro wrestling, one way that they come together easily, like Malone and Rodman did, the vertical leap. I really do, because almost every basketball-related pro wrestling match has got a drop-down, leapfrog, a lot of athletic stuff that they were able to do.
I've never tried it. I'm never going to try it.
Hat on top cause we think excellent. Frames on straight cause I see excellent. Dress for success cause I be excellent. Everything we do, everything we do.
Hey guys, how you doing?
What up?
How you doing? Good to see you.
Welcome to our home.
Well, Cody, man, thanks for having me in your house,
Thank
man.
you.
And one of the things I want to ask you, at the beginning of the show, is what really got you into wrestling?
It's
Even though I know it runs in your family.
Sure.
I get that.
So it's so easy for me to say, oh, I wanted to be a wrestler because Pops was a wrestler, and Dusty Rhodes having had such a large career and continued influence on the wrestling business.
Mm-hmm.
But it was really the first time I ever went to a wrestling show, because Dusty was 39 when he had me, and he was past his prime, and he was more of an executive at that point. Mm-hmm. So when I went to a show, I wasn't really familiar with who he was as a wrestler as much as who he was as my dad. But I was backstage, and I think it's Brad Armstrong and another wrestler in the ring. I know it's Brad Armstrong, but they took a bump on the mat, and I'm backstage, so I couldn't see it, but I could hear it. And I think we were in Savannah, Georgia, at just a live event, non-televised, and I could hear the crowd react. And I remember thinking, as cool as like backstage is, I got to be out there. I have to see what they're doing. And after hearing it, I think it was 6 or 7 at the time, there was never anything else I wanted to be other than a pro wrestler. And Dusty, that door is wide open. When you have a person like that, there's a lot of nepotism in pro wrestling.
Question, and I'm one of those guys who kind of grew up on Dusty, so I remember him in his prime.
Yeah.
And he was a household name, and like I said, a legend in the sport of wrestling. So it's almost like, for you, it seems like it was kind of ordained to be.
Yeah.
Even though you might have some other things that you might have been passionate about, but once you're around and you get that energy, and you see that energy, you get that bug. And you're like,
in your
hey,
blood.
Yeah, it's in your blood. It's the pedigree from your family. All of us get a chance to taste it. It just comes down to who wanted the most.
I think in my case, I was really blessed because my brother, older brother, who by 16 years, he came from my dad's first marriage, and he had to follow my dad almost directly, whereas there's a longer gap between Dusty in his prime and when I debuted. And Dustin had a harder path to success, but Dustin got all of Dusty. I mean, he was much taller than me. I always thought I was going to be like 6'4", like my brother, and he was much taller. He was just super athletic. Everything was smooth in the ring. And the first time I went to train in the ring and hit the ropes, I was 2 left feet, could barely get it. But my mother, her whole thing is just, she's a work ethic woman. She's this little mean Cuban woman, and I love her to death. But I'm so blessed I got that, because that's been the whole journey for me. A really slow learner. I'm 34 now. I've been doing this professionally since I was 19. But that work ethic, that was the thing that she gave me the most. That really, at the end of the day, in wrestling, you have to endure. They're going to see you. I grew up on television for them, people watching WWE from 2007 on, but I'm so glad that I got a little less dusty, actually, and got a lot of hurt.
It's a lot of pressure being a son of a superstar, of a legend in the sport. So I can imagine how hard it was. I have a younger son that is in that same situation, but he's always said at a very early age, I'm a basketball player. I don't want to play any other sport.
Yeah.
Because he had his older brother played, his uncle had played, his cousin has played professional. So, it's in his blood.
Yeah, and that's, you've got to be your own man or your own woman. I always put little dashes of nostalgia in my matches. I'll give you an example. Like most recently, we used Tully Blanchard and Arn Anderson were involved in my match at All Out in Chicago. But I only sprinkle it in here and there because otherwise I'm just doing a tribute act. Because there's so many people who remember him, and if I just do what Dusty did or even try, I'm not doing. He wouldn't like it that way. Right. So that's the path. Your son, and it's a very unique path.
But I tell my son, I said, and you're right, be your own man. I mean, there is a level of expectations because you're a son of someone who played on a very high level, but you can create your own name, own brand. But if using my name helps you get there, there's nothing wrong with that. And the same thing in your case, and hey, it's worked out.
Yeah, no, and it's we were talking kind of earlier, and that's the biggest. It's on both the pros and cons side. Hey, your father, boom, the door is wide open. But once the door is open,
it's all up to you.
It's all up to you. Yeah, and show us. And that's the scariest, but when you execute, the best feeling in the world. When that's something I'm particularly proud of. Who Dusty was as a wrestler, who Gold Dust was as a wrestler, and who I am. They're very different, so that you're not getting the same thing.
When did you know you were good?
I still, there's vindicating and validating moments in wrestling, and they're strictly crowd-based. When you get something good from the crowd, that's the ultimate reward for a athlete and, in our case, a performer, because we're on the sports entertainment side. I've been saying, I think I finally found my stance as a pro wrestler, where I could be hitting home runs in terms of these segments and these matches. 11 years after I debuted. I feel like that's why I say I'm a slow learner. 31 is the first time I really felt like I'd found my stance, and it was one great segment after another, and all I wanted to do with that is build to the next. And in wrestling, they will tell you. If they'll boo you out of the building, they'll let you know. They'll either, and this works both ways. If they boo you out of the building, it's actually good if they're supposed to. If they cheer for you and they pop for you, and that's what they're supposed to do, it's great. But when they sit on their hands, it's you're not doing something. You're not clicking. You're not connecting.
Right. You get a little bored, and they're waiting for the next match.
Yeah.
That's in basketball the same way, in any sport the same way. When you got a team that's just out there, fans lose interest very quickly. But you found your niche. It may took you a little later than other people, but you stuck with it, and you found, hey, this is something I could really do. I can really see myself making a career out of.
So the lockup, every match in the history of time pretty much starts with a lockup, and it's how you know where you want to go next. But if you put your hand on the back of my neck, I put this one, and then you reverse it, that's the lockup right there. So that's where we're moving. That's where we're doing everything. If I grab your arm to do something, if I pull you in for a headlock. But as we teach younger folks how to do a lockup, we get in the habit of just popping it off, where you do this. This is actually how me and my dad used to say hey to each other. Yep, boom, you got like that, just a quick lockup. So when you get in a match and it's you and the other guy, and you're doing all this business, the moment eyes lock, it's lockup time. There it is, boom. He got it.
He got it.
He got it.
Pro at this, man. I've watched wrestling for over 30 years,
Look,
man. So.
let me kick you a scenario, right? If somebody, if a man had shoved Brandy down in the ring, you could easily turn him around and give him a body slam, I imagine.
Oh yeah, for sure.
He's got
for
it.
sure, no question.
Maybe we'll get one spot.
Yeah. When was your first time that you felt like it may not be for you, or you hit some obstacle in the road that you had to figure out?
Ooh. I would say early 20s. I was part of a lot of tag teams. So I was a tag team with Ted DiBiase Jr., tag team with Bob Holly, Drew McIntyre. I was in all these tags. And sometimes tag teams are top of the card, but a lot of times, especially from the WWE style, it's to get two guys together who need each other and have to rub off each other. And I'd say 22, 23 was the first time no longer being Dusty Sun mattered. We've got to see what's next now. And you've got to physically be imposing too. Now wrestling, being sports entertainment, you don't have to be 7 feet tall. You don't have to be the most jacked individual. But I was a drug-free 22-year-old athlete who just kind of looked like this lanky, plucky, like underdog. So that was the first time I realized when I was tagging with Ted Jr., because they really looked at him as like the golden goose. He's going to grow into a franchise guy. That was the first time I looked at my career and decided I've got to work. I thought I was working hard. I've got to work way harder than I even imagined. I've got to do everything. I've got to invest in nutrition, invest in training, and especially from a drug-free standpoint. Can't take any shortcuts. And the first hurdle, the first speed bump, that age, those were the best things for me. Because if I look back at it, I always ended up, it motivated me where I always ended up in the spot I wanted to be.
If you had to go back, after all the stuff you've been through,
Sure.
you know, with your family, what would you tell your younger self if you had to go back and speak to that young man?
Sounds strange. If I had to go back and speak to a younger self, I wouldn't tell him a damn thing. I really wouldn't, because I needed every kick in the ass, every time I fell down, every I needed all that. Otherwise, I would have never known. I have a lot of who work with AEW now who are in their early 20s, young guys, young girls on top of the world, and I get to watch them go through phases, like I went through phases, where you believe your own hype, phases where you're a little complacent. I got to watch it all, and I get to kind of see, like, hey, I'll see if they get on the other side of this. So I honestly wouldn't say a word. I couldn't, because I needed all of that.
Hey, it's that upbringing, some of those, I won't say failures, but setbacks that really makes you who you are now.
Yeah.
I mean, because you haven't went through any failures, any setbacks, you know, you really hadn't put yourself in position to lead, and I say that all the time. So, you know, everybody has kind of a similar story when you go back and ask them that question. So it's really nice to see that because you have that passion about something you believe in, you don't believe that anything can derail you from your goal.
Yeah.
You know, so, you know, I've been a part of basketball for 35 years. And I asked myself that question many, many times, and all we come up with the same answer: nothing. You know, because it was supposed to happen that way for you to get to a level of success. So moving forward, because you're still wrestling,
You know what? One thing, I would have told myself to save a little bit more money. I was an idiot. Just that's the only thing. I was an idiot with my money.
Hey, weren't we all?
Right? Okay. All right. That's
Weren't
it.
we all? Yeah. So we all have been through that. But you know, you get wiser as you get a little bit
Sure.
older. You know, especially now I'm north of 30.
Right.
If you believe that.
No, I hear you. Snort.
But you know, if moving forward, where do you see yourself in the next 5 years?
So the next 5 years, being that with All Elite Wrestling coming to TNT, the first wrestling that's been on TV other than WWE in almost 20 years, and me being its executive vice president, I want that to be weekly viewing. I want that to be something people are looking forward to on a weekly basis. And if I'm the top star in the company, great. If I'm not, it's also great. From an infrastructure side, I want to lead and manage. This is my first time in wrestling as a leader. as somebody in management, and I want to get all the good stuff I got when people managed me and led me. I want to get all that, and I want to dump that onto the next generation of men and women.
Well, I think this is what the Dominant Show is all about too. It's not always about the winning and losing, but the sacrifices you've been through, the struggles, the hurt and the pain that really made you who you are today. Like you said a second ago, you wish you could change very small things like saving more money.
Right.
Because, when you're young, you just don't think about stuff
Right.
like that. But it takes a dominant attitude, a positive and strong mentality to turn all that around and turn into something positive. So this is what it's about. That's what makes us who we are. And that's kind of really, really beautiful to see when you see people in different fields find their niche, but find out what works and what didn't work. And you try not to make the same mistake twice. So our last question I'd love to ask is, could you describe dominance in your life? How did you get that dominant attitude, and what does it mean to you?
I always think in such kind of a wrestling perspective, and I was thinking about this. Dominance to me, and this could sound peculiar, but dominance to me means good content. And what I mean by that is, in my field and where I am now, wrestling, hopefully at the highest level, our attention spans as a viewer are so small, and it's so easy to move on to the next thing. The only thing that wins in this era of reality being reality, perception isn't reality anymore. Reality is reality, and content wins. So to me, dominance is always having great content. Always. And the only way great content happens in the world of sports and entertainment, which is wrestling, is preparation. And that's something I think that's my number one attribute as a pro wrestler is preparation. There's nothing I never want to go out there. I know there's a kind of improvisational feel to it and a fun, but you can only give into that if you know what you plan to do in the first place. Right. So that's what I would say for me is dominance.
I mean, that's great. Well, Cody, I tell you, man, it's been really cool getting to know you and your wife. Thanks. And man, I wish you the best moving forward. And we're gonna see a lot of each other. So
yeah.
Again, thanks, man. That's dominance.